session of the day, where an ex-test pilot and a satirist take us to the world of satirical writings in the inimitable Jug Surya style. Mr. Jug Suraiya is a renowned and highly respected Indian journalist, author, and columnist. He is best known as a satirist and columnist. Jug Suraiya is a former editorial opinion editor and associate editor of the Times of India. He is the author of 15 published books, including a novel, 2 anthologies of short fiction, an anthology of travel writing, compilations of his satirical columns, a collection of essays on philosophical and political themes, a memoir of his career in journalism, which touches upon the many changes that the profession has seen in India, and compilations of his cartoons created in collaboration with 2 illustrators. Jug Surya writes 2 very popular columns from the print edition of the Times of India. One is Jugular Vein, and the other one is Second Opinion. He also writes the script for 2 cartoon strips for Times of India, Dunya Ke Neta and Like That Only. May I please request Mr. Jug Suraiya to come on the stage. I now invite our dynamic moderator, Mr. Yuri Suri, who is an ex-Indian Air Force wing commander, fighter test pilot with 3,000 flying hours, pioneering FM radio on-air person, and Bollywood actor with 57 movies and TV series under his belt. Please come, Mr. Yuri Suri.
Incredible. Thank you, Novel Bunch and Infosys for having invited us to speak here on this August audience. It's all full now. I think there's nobody who's sovathe or kovathe. Well, so today our first guest on Incredible is a man who started his working life by being a painter of walls. His first job, he borrowed $1,700 from his mother. He bought a spray gun, and he got his first job. He went to paint somebody's house white, except he forgot to cover the furniture with those bed sheets or newspaper. So half the furniture got painted, along with the homeowner's wife. It was white paint, so she was looking fair but not lovely. So that career came to an end immediately. The next career was to be, there were a lot of rabbits around his house, so he thought he'll become a rabbit hunter. But unfortunately, his neighbor every evening used to start singing Rabindra Sangeet, which he did very badly, and all the rabbits ran away. So that came to an end abruptly. The third profession he thought of was he wanted to grow beedi leaves. Okay? But there was an investment of 30,000 rupees involved in that, so he went back to his mother. She said, get me back the 1,700 rupees first, then I'll talk about the 30,000 rupees. So that never took off. Now, having started from there, today this man is a known author. He's done 17 books. He's a famous journalist. The keynote address said, maybe in the future you guys will be rubbing shoulders with some of the giants in the literary world. Well, I didn't know it'll come true immediately. You're already rubbing shoulders with a giant. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jug Suraiya.
Thank you, Yuri. You spoke about this person. Is the person going to be joining us?
The moment you sit down, he'll be on the couch.
Okay. Yuri and I met. We were talking about this morning. More years ago than either of us would care to remember. I was working full time at the Times of India at that time, and I got a phone call in my office, and it was from a person who was doing a musical show on TV and would intersperse the playing of the music with an interview. So he said, would I come along? And I said, yeah, okay. And I went home. When I got home, I told my wife, Bane, I said, Bane, a young chap sort of phoned me today, and has invited me to come on this radio talk show. So when I got home after work, I told Bunny that this young chap had called me. It's a bit inconvenient to go in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of a working day, to to the studio where this talk would be recorded. But I thought I'd help this young chap out. And that's the first time I met Yuri. And I realized that he was a young man, but not quite the teenager that I'd imagined. Since then, we've done several interactions, I think, and they've always been, I think, stimulating and thought-provoking. You know, Yuri, when you think about it, you and I, on the face of it, superficially speaking, have very different professions. You are very much, I mean, obviously, you are, your image is very much, you know, on the screen, on television, whereas I'm not in the public eye. You know, I sit in my den, my studio, where I write, and it's a very private thing. It's a very inward looking thing, which I do, and yet when you go beyond this superficial difference, there's a fundamental union in what we do, in the sense that you don't be Yuri when you're acting. You can be, as you were in Jodha Akbar, you can be this great warrior chieftain, and or when you did the Indian version of 24, then you're like a spy master, counter-terrorist operative. Similarly, so what happens is that you learn to get into the skin, get into the minds of different kinds of people. This requires a great deal of what I would call creative empathy, to be able to submerge your ego, or to clear it away, and to enter into the mind, into the spirit, into the soul of a character, many different characters. So in a way, you lead, you reincarnate yourself every time you take up a new role, and you portray a different character. And I think that similarly, a writer has to, people often ask me, when you do these regular columns, 2 columns a week, how do you get these ideas? And I say, very simple. I get them from you. If I were just to write just from my own perspective, I would be the greatest bore in the world, because I'd be just limiting myself to my own very small, petty ego. It's only if I open my ears and not just hear you, but listen to all of you, to each and every one of you. What are you talking about? What are you thinking about? And I don't have to meet all these people personally. I can get a drift of this by reading the newspapers, by seeing films, by seeing what's happening on television, by talking to random people, by traveling, and by meeting people from different countries, different walks of life. And I get a feeling of what different people are thinking, what they're experiencing. And I try to see the world through their eyes, through their perspective. So in that way, like Yuri reinterprets himself, reincarnates himself in different roles, I think writers also do something very similar. if they want to communicate. Because really, what is the writer doing? The writer, how does the writer communicate with the reader? Actually, what is happening is the writer is only aiding and abetting the reader to communicate with herself, the reader to communicate with himself or herself. Because if you don't, it doesn't work. I mean, very often you'll uh, start reading something, maybe an article in the newspaper or a book, and after a while, it, you can't relate to what this person is saying, which means you can't relate to yourself. In that sense, the writer has failed, because the job of the writer is to reveal to yourself what you always known but had misremembered. It's just like a good secretary's job is to tell the boss, boss, don't forget you have this appointment or you have this to do today. So I think a good writer, an effective writer, let's use the word effective, is someone like a good secretary who tells the boss. And who's the boss? The boss is the reader. The boss is you. That, hey, boss, maybe you forgot this, but you know, this is an emotion you once felt. This is a place you once visited. This is the dream you once had. That's all. A good writer, an effective writer, is like an efficient secretary, a PA, a personal assistant, who just reminds the reader what the reader has always known, temporarily misplaced in her mind. Yuri, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes, very well put, Jug. This was, a matter of fact, one of my intended questions I wanted to ask Jug. Where does he get his ideas from when he writes? He's put it very clearly about, you know, being a secretary to us all. It just keeps reminding us of the experiences that we've had in our lives and to revisit them. But I've got a little story about how Jug gets his ideas. There was this, we had a good friend, Gautam Adhikari. He was the editor of the Times of India. So Gautam, and there was another journalist called Malvika Sanghvi, Veer Sanghvi's ex-wife, and myself. So Gautam, Yuri, and Malvika spelled out Jim. It was an acronym for Jim. We were all musicians. I used to play the guitar, Gautam used to play the guitar, Malvika used to play the guitar. So we formed a band called Jim. And we were a great band, except that our repertoire had just one song. We could play just one song. And every party, and Jug was always there with us, drinking in the evenings. And we used to play that song, and that song was Woolly Bully. This guy wrote an article about it. He put us in the middle of the Times of India. And it was all about how we sang Woolly Bully. Amazing. I mean, how somebody could have thought of, you know, filling up that space worth about 2,500 words with a simple thing like this band has only one song in their repertoire. That is amazing.
It wasn't just one song. It was basically a song composed of only two words, Woolly Bully. Those are the only two words. So they keep repeating Woolly Bully in various permutations and combinations.
So this guy is remarkable. I mean, he goes anywhere and he picks up anything and he'll make it sound so good and funny that, you know, people will want to go back to it and say, what is this thing about? So Jug is amazing. So, okay, we finished that question. Now, how do you get your ideas? But how do you get them day after day after day? And you don't only write for the Times of India, you write for various other publications around the world, including the New York Times, and so there was something in the Middle East.
Khalij Times, yeah.
That
was a while
the
back.
Khalij Times, one of your Khalij Times articles also. I think we'd gone to see a movie together, and how he wrote about how we all came out and there were people coming for autographs, my autographs, and how, remember that thing? We went to see Chai Pani, etc. or something. Yeah. So, okay, so how does it happen day after day after day? I mean, you've got to finish that article well in time for it to be published twice a week in the Times of India.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jug. So how do you get them day after day after day? And along with that, you're getting your ideas for your books also. 17 books is not a joke.
You know, someone once described being on a battlefield. But nothing much happens to begin with. Well, the two sides confront each other, and the long periods of boredom, and then there are moments of absolute terror when the action begins. Now, meeting constant deadlines, journalistic deadlines or any kind, is rather like that. There are long periods of boredom, and where you wonder, what am I going to write about? And then suddenly the deadline is upon you, and the action has to begin. So it's a bit like a mental battlefield that you confront each time, and each time you think, I'm not going to be able to do this. Now, Bunny is. She tells me that she's had a long and very illustrious career in advertising. She was creative director of Ogilvy and Mather, which is a worldwide advertising agency. And she said that every time she had to prepare a campaign for a client, she was absolutely convinced that she wouldn't be able to do it, that she would fall flat on her face. And yet, time and time again, she produced fantastic, wonderful, incredible campaigns. So, I don't know if it's like this for you, Yuri, when you are offered a different role. Do you have these moments of doubt, of fear, of tremendous anxiety that will I be able to do this role?
It's a little different because we've got a target given to us. I mean, this is what it's going to be. So you work on that and you develop it further.
Okay.
Not as bad as having to think of a brand new subject and say what's going to be interesting for the audiences or for the readers that you're going to address.
Okay, but you say that you are given a particular role and you're given lines, All right, but each actor will do a particular role in a different way. For example, I've seen The Merchant of Venice. I've seen it on stage, Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, and I've seen movie versions of it. And I've seen so many different actors doing it, and each one is so different from the other. The one which I remember most vividly, Bunny, was it Al Pacino who did Sherlock? I think it was Al Pacino who a person. If you've seen a film like Heat, for example, which has Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, you wouldn't think that a man like Al Pacino would be able to do Shylock, this tormented Jewish moneylender, and but so each. If you, for example, were to do Shylock, or if you were to do Othello, you would do it in your own way. You would interpret that role in your own way. So there is this a constant at any attempt of communication, whether it's as an actor or as an effective writer, any effort to communicate to someone else, to communicate someone out there. There's a lot of tension involved if you're going to be able to get your message across. And then finally, that tension releases a lot of energy. It's rather like, well, it's rather like if you split open an atom, you release an enormous amount of energy. It's in a in a microscopic way, it is rather like that. That this tension that builds up inside one, whether you're an actor or a writer or any form of communication, in advertising, which is a great form of communication, you don't know if you're going to be able to do it, if you're going to be able to get through to the viewer, the reader. And this creates a lot of internal tension, and this in turn comes out in the form of a burst of energy, and that's when you can get your message across.
Well, we spoke of communication, Jug. I'll come to another aspect of communication. I don't know how many of you know this, but when I say something to you, my words are only 7% of the communication. Has anybody heard about this? The rest of the 93% is how I say what I say and my body language. Now, you don't have the advantage of, sounding different. I mean, you are using words. You play magic with your words. Incidentally, Jug, by his own admission, he's a word collector. Is there a word for that? Like a stamp collector is called a philatelist or something, and a logophile or a lexiphile or something. Is there a name for a word collector?
Perhaps.
Well, Jug collects them and he uses them as his ammunition to shoot down the world. So, Jug, you don't have the advantage of being able to change the way you say it or raise your volume or, there's nothing that you can use in terms of the spoken communication. We have that advantage as actors. How do you paint your picture without the use of all these little advantages that we have?
Well, I think, different words, it's like musical notes, okay? If you I'm not a musician, I'm tone deaf, I can't even, but...
You recognize Woolly Bully.
I recognize Woolly Bully, yes, nice. Yes. No, but you'll have the soft notes, you'll have the high notes, you'll have the bass notes. Now, when you write, the words that I would use if I wanted to write something humorous, the words I would choose would be different from the words that I would use. The tone of the words, the words I would use if I was wanting to write something which to convey a sense of sorrow. Now, it's to give you an example, to write humorously, in a humorous way, say for example, if you wanted to, now I'm going to borrow from P.G. Wodehouse. P.G. Wodehouse, he would use the term, he's talking about a sailor, he'd use the term tar, because yeah.
Thank you, tar.
No, T-A-R. That's
tar,
yeah.
okay.
Or he'd use a different sort of word. The relationship between Bertie Wooster and Jeeves. Jeeves is never described as a servant or a menial. He is a gentleman's personal gentleman. If once Woodhouse had used the term, or someone had said of Jeeves, described him as a servant, that magic would have been broken. So it's to describe someone who is basically a domestic help as a gentleman's personal gentleman, the cook, Anatole on Delia's Cook is not just called a chef. Woodhouse describes him as God's gift to the gastric juices. I mean, imagine describing a cook, a borshi, as God's gift to the gastric juices. So it's how you describe people, how you describe events. You know, one of the greatest short story writers, Chekhov, was once asked in an interview that, is there any subject which you could not make interesting through your writing? And they were Russians, they were smoking all the time. So Chekhov stubbed out a cigarette in the ashtray. He said, I can make that ashtray interesting. So it's depending on the words that you use. What would Chekhov have said about the ashtray? How do you describe the ashtray? The receptacle of all our stubbed out dreams. Something like that? I don't know.
My God, I'm so impressed by the exuberance of your verbosity. Okay, Jug, so how does it happen when an article, the finished product is what we read in the newspaper? How do you write it? Is it like, well, not really, I'm sorry to put it that way, but is it like the morning job, you go, finish it, get up and come back? Or is it, do you write in spurts? Or is there a little routine that you follow to be able to sit down and think creatively and put your words down on paper? Incidentally, do you still write with your pen?
I do indeed.
So I remember the times we used to be celebrating Jug's birthday, 4th of November, every year in Goa. And he used to dictate the thing to Bunny. Bunny could type. And she used to go to the internet cafe there and send it to the Times of India. Remember that, Bunny? Yeah. So how does the procedure happen? I mean, do you get up, immediately go sit down, pen it down, and then finish the article? Or does it happen in spurts?
Generally speaking, all the actual work is done long before I sit down with pen and paper, because it's all up here. It's in my mind. And the actual manual task of putting it down on paper, it comes almost automatically.
Do you sometimes dream about things in the night and get up and make a little note on something?
Very often.
You do?
Yeah. Don't actually get up and make a note, but I try to make a mental note, and I do remember it the next day.
And then you expand that thought and make it into a fantastic piece that we enjoy.
But to talk about, when you mentioned this thing that I still use, I'm totally digitally challenged. I can't use a computer or anything. I write longhand. And I remember when I was being interviewed for my job in the Times of India, the editor at that time was Girilal Jain. And I noticed when I went into the Times of India offices in Delhi that there were computers on everyone's desk. And so at the end of this thing, I told Girilal Jain, I said, look, Giri, I noticed computers on everyone's desk, and there's a computer on your desk. But I'm sorry, but I can't use a computer. I can't even use a typewriter. I'm old-fashioned that way. So he said, what do you use? So I took out the ballpoint pen, the biro, and he said, I use this. And he looked at me scornfully. He said, you call that old-fashioned? He took out his fountain pen. So that put me in my place, Yeah, so I still write longhand.
Great. How many hours do you have in a day?
How many hours do I have in a day?
We all have 24. How many do you have?
I sleep a lot. I'm a lazy, being a lazy person. So you're talking about how many waking hours or conscious hours?
So Jug fits in a lot into his day. Of course, he does what he does best. He writes, and we all read it. Jug is also, now taking you back to the story when Jug and I met, it wasn't just we sat across the table and I interviewed him and he gave the answers. At the end of the interview, I said, can I drop you back home? And he was living in Vasant Kunj at that time. So I dropped him back home and he very politely asked me, would you like to come up for a drink? So I thought I'd been made an offer that I couldn't refuse. So I said, of course. So I went up to his apartment and I met Bunny and we had a drink there. The common factor between Jug and I was not the creativity that he spoke about at that time. It was this bottle of, what is it, Black Label that time that you opened? So I think we bonded fairly well on that and we've bonded fairly well on that ever since for a long time. So Jug is very fond of eating. He's very fond of drinking his alcohol. He enjoys his wine in the evening, so does Bunny. Jug does his physical workouts every day. I mean, he doesn't let a day pass without working out. Even today, he does his 10, pull-ups, and he does his on-the-spot jogging and stuff. And I don't know what else resistance training you're doing. You're doing push-ups and stuff like that. You do all that. But incidentally, nobody should ever take panga with Jug now. I've never seen anyone raise a finger at Jug. But there was this party where there was this guy who was speaking like this, and he was talking to Bunny at that time. I don't know what he was saying, whether he was saying something polite or whether he was just making a gesture. Jug didn't like it. You saw it from a distance. Guess what he did? He just broke the finger. That's it.
I don't know.
Okay, Jug's version of it.
I think, Yuri, you're making up another role for yourself. As you, no. Nothing of the sort happened. I'm a very peace-loving individual, and I would.
Bunny? Yeah, so how do you fit in so many things in just 24 hours? When we are struggling to find hours, you have actually managed to fit in a whole lot of things. And plus you've written your book, 17 books. How do you find the time?
Well, as someone pointed out, time is very elastic, if you're bored, time slows down completely. As a character in one of my favorite novels, Catch-22, used to play tennis, and someone asked him, you're a very keen tennis player, why do you play so much tennis? He says, because I find tennis very boring. So you play tennis because you find it very boring? He said, yes, because when I'm bored, time passes slowly and I feel I'm living longer. So you keep playing tennis and you get bored. So you just want to lead a very long, boring life. Or do you want to lead, a hectic life full of passion and excitement, where time passes very fast? One crowded hour of glorious life is better than a nameless age. I think that's the way it was put. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
That how many hours in a day does one have? It all depends.
Well, so I want to leave about 5 or 7 minutes for all of you also to answer, to ask questions of Jug, and he'll be answering. But one final question of you, Jug. Take us back to the days that most of us were very young, and we used to read a magazine called the Junior Statesman. You remember that? Yes. It was iconic. Jug, JS, the magazine was named after him. Jug Suraiya, JS, Junior Statesman. But he was one of the founding members of the four-member team. You, Dabi Bhagat, and
Papa Menon.
Yeah, tell us about the JS days.
Well, it was an amazing publication, and as the editor, who's the real creator of the JS, was a man called Desmond Doig, who was an incredible man. He was truly a Renaissance man in the sense that he was a man of many talents. He was a painter, an artist, a very, very good photographer, a great writer, a marvelous raconteur. You know, he could tell you so many stories, and keep you absolutely enthralled. So he was the first journalist in the world who wrote about Mother Teresa. He, along with Edmund Hillary, the first man to climb Everest, along with Tenzing Norgay, Desmond went up with Hillary on this. I think it was a 3-month-long trip into the Himalayas, looking for the so-called the fabled Yeti, the abominable snowman of the Himalayas. This was done for National Geographic magazine. So Desmond had led this amazing life, and he brought all this energy and experience that he's had into starting this magazine, which was it was called the Junior Statesman because it was supposed to be a magazine for young people of all ages. You know, it depended, you thought young. It was called the magazine that thinks young. You could be a grandfather and still enjoy reading that magazine. And so he wanted young people to write it.